In the region of Waterloo, it is crucial for residents to conserve water, especially during the warmer months when water demands peak. We achieve this by enforcing the Water Conservation Bylaw. Here's how the bylaw works. Between May 31st and September 30th, residents have a designated lawn watering day once a week. If your address ends with 0 or 1, your lawn watering day is Mondays. For addresses ending in 2 or 3, it's Tuesdays, and so forth. Residents in condos, apartments or townhouses should use the last digit of the complex's municipal address. All watering has to be done between 5:30 and 10 a.m. or between 7 and 11 p.m. Residents can apply for watering exceptions such as change day or seed, sod or nematode watering permits. Seed or sod permits allow you to water any time in the first 24 hours after planting. From day 2 to 6 after planting, you can water between 5:30 to 10 a.m. and 7 to 11 p.m. The second week after planting, you can water every other day within these hours. You can follow the same rules for days 1 through 7 after planting for a nematode permit. Watering of trees, shrubs, gardens, washing cars, etc. can be done every other day during the same morning and evening hours. Odd-numbered addresses can water on odd-numbered calendar dates and even addresses on even dates. For more information on the Water Conservation Bylaw or to submit an application for watering, seed, sod or nematodes, visit regionofwaterloo.ca/water bylaw. In the region of Waterloo, it is crucial for residents to conserve water, especially during the warmer months when water demands peak. We achieve this by enforcing the Water Conservation Bylaw. Here's how the bylaw works. Between May 31st and September 30th, residents have a designated lawn watering day once a week. If your address ends with 0 or 1, your lawn watering day is Mondays. For addresses ending in 2 or 3, it's Tuesdays, and so forth. Residents in condos, apartments or townhouses should use the last digit of the complex's municipal address. All watering has to be done between 5:30 and 10 a.m. or between 7 and 11 p.m. Residents can apply for watering exceptions such as change day or seed, sod or nematode watering permits. Seed or sod permits allow you to water any time in the first 24 hours after planting. From day 2 to 6 after planting, you can water between 5:30 to 10 a.m. and 7 to 11 p.m. The second week after planting, you can water every other day within these hours. You can follow the same rules for days 1 through 7 after planting for a nematode permit. Watering of trees, shrubs, gardens, washing cars, etc. can be done every other day during the same morning and evening hours. Odd-numbered addresses can water on odd-numbered calendar dates and even addresses on even dates. For more information on the Water Conservation Bylaw or to submit an application for watering, seed, sod or nematodes, visit regionofwaterloo.ca/water bylaw.
Good evening, everyone. We'll start the webinar in 5 minutes.
In the region of Waterloo, it is crucial for residents to conserve water, especially during the warmer months when water demands peak. We achieve this by enforcing the Water Conservation Bylaw. Here's how the bylaw works. Between May 31st and September 30th, residents have a designated lawn watering day once a week. If your address ends with 0 or 1, your lawn watering day is Mondays. For addresses ending in 2 or 3, it's Tuesdays, and so forth. Residents in condos, apartments or townhouses should use the last digit of the complex's municipal address. All watering has to be done between 5:30 and 10 a.m. or between 7 and 11 p.m. Residents can apply for watering exceptions such as change day or seed, sod or nematode watering permits. Seed or sod permits allow you to water any time in the first 24 hours after planting. From day 2 to 6 after planting, you can water between 5:30 to 10 a.m. and 7 to 11 p.m. The second week after planting, you can water every other day within these hours. You can follow the same rules for days 1 through 7 after planting for a nematode permit. Watering of trees, shrubs, gardens, washing cars, etc. can be done every other day during the same morning and evening hours. Odd-numbered addresses can water on odd-numbered calendar dates and even addresses on even dates. For more information on the Water Conservation Bylaw or to submit an application for watering, seed, sod or nematodes, visit regionofwaterloo.ca/water bylaw.
So welcome everyone to what you don't want to hear about your water use, but you need to know. So a little bit of housekeeping while you're signing in. So please submit any questions through our Q&A. So you'll see that button on your screen, and we'll be answering your questions throughout the webinar, and we'll be posting important links in the chat. This webinar will be recorded and will be posted in our YouTube channel. So let's get started. So thank you everyone for coming. My name is Lisa. I am the Program Director at Reep Green Solution, and I will be your host tonight. So with summer just around the corner, it's the ideal time to prepare for the potential increases of water use. So in tonight's webinar, our water conservation experts will share tips on reducing your household water expenses. It's also worth to stay until the end because we have a survey for 3 lucky people to win a water efficiency prize pack that includes a water timer, a moisture meter for your lawn, a aerator for your kitchen and bathroom, a stainless steel water bottle, a water efficient rain shower head, and the region's water programs info pack to learn more of how you can take action and start saving money on your water bills. So to set the stage, I'll take a moment here to open our virtual space with a territorial acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that Waterloo Region and the Grand River watershed are located in the traditional territory of Indigenous people, including the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples. We recognize the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, and their contribution to our community. We value their traditional knowledge about how to live sustainably on this land that we share and will leave for our future generation. Reep Green Solution and the Region of Waterloo were all committed to the necessary learning or the relationship building and the actions to work towards reconciliation. So I would like to introduce you to our 3 lovely panelists tonight. So starting on our left, we have Nicole. Nicole joined the Region of Waterloo 7 years ago with 10 years of experience in environmental compliance, water assessment, gas and water leaks detection. As a water program coordinator at the region, Nicole coordinates residential water efficiency programs with the goal to help residents and property managers reduce their water bills while lowering their demand on the community water system and supply. In her spare time, she loves walking local trails with her family and going on adventures with her kids. In the middle, we have Tyler. Tyler is a water program coordinator with the Region of Waterloo. Tyler is a communication and outreach professional with years of experience in community engagement. Since joining the Region of Waterloo in 2022, Tyler has focused on water programs designed to help residents cut down on their water use and save money on their water bills. And on your right, we have Brendan. Brendan has a background in construction and renovation and has worked with Reep Green Solution as a registered energy and water advisor for over 10 years and has conducted well over 1,000 of Home Energy Evaluation and Water Audits in Waterloo Region. So to get started, my first question to the panelists is directed to Tyler and Nicole. So thank you for joining us this evening. You both mentioned that you're part of the water programs team at the Region of Waterloo. So I'm wondering if you could tell us maybe a little bit about why water conservation is important and what sort of programs are offered by local residents to local residents by the water programs team.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. I'll talk a little bit about what water programs we have, and then I'll pass it over to Tyler to talk about why water conservation is important. So at the region, we have our water programs team has several water efficiency programs that we offer to residents. We have programs for single-family homes, multi-unit properties, as well as businesses to help reduce water use. Some of our residential programs include our Wet Home Water Review program, which provides a free home visit where a conservation expert assesses your home's water fixtures, appliances, discusses water use behaviors, and makes suggestions on how you can reduce your water bills and your at-home water use. The program also helps identify possible leaks that could be leading to higher than normal water use. We also have programs that offer funding and rebates for larger water-saving projects in the commercial, industrial, and institutional sectors, as well as for multi-residential buildings. We participate in community events to promote our programs and provide education on our water supply and distribution systems. And we also partner with community organizations such as Reep to offer webinars like this one. And finally, we also help provide the water conservation bylaw and associated programs that runs from May 31st to September 30th every year. I'll pass it on to Tyler.
Thanks, Nicole, and thanks, Lisa, for the lovely introduction. So Nicole kind of covered, some of the work that our program does, and the essence of all that is essentially water conservation. And if you're wondering why you should consider conserving water, it's spelled out for you here on this slide. So as our community grows, we need to make sure there's enough clean drinking water for everyone. And part of making sure we manage that demand is doing some outreach, doing some programs that are aimed at educating people on their water use and how to reduce that. You'll find throughout this presentation that the simplest way to have a positive impact on our environment and as a result to your water bills is making small little changes to your behaviors and your daily routine. So just moving on to why conservation matters. We do have a bit of a unique supply of water here in Waterloo Region. Lisa, if we can move to the next slide, thank you. So our water system is quite unique. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we need to make sure we have enough water supply in case of an emergency. And like I said, we do have a growing population, and along with a growing population needs our infrastructure is aging and needs some maintenance and upgrades. And we're also, reducing our impact on the environment. We often think about where our water comes from. We don't necessarily think about where our water goes. So we do treat the water that you use and we return it and disperse it into the environment. So we have to make sure that we're up to code on that. And then long term, we're delaying a pipeline to the Great Lakes. We'll talk about where our water comes from in a moment here, but in essence, we think about water conservation as a means of managing the water supply that we have. We are seeking new sources of water within the groundwater aquifers that we have here in the region. And if we delay the need for a water source that comes from outside of our region, it's going to benefit all of us in the long run. So just moving on to our actual water supply here, if we could go to the next slide, Lisa. Like I mentioned before, our water system is unique. About 80% of our drinking water comes from groundwater aquifers, and then the other 20% comes from the Grand River. So when you drink water from your tap, you're not necessarily getting one or the other. You're getting a mixture of both of these sources. But yeah, so we get about 80% from groundwater aquifers, 20% from the Grand River. The region collects and treats that water, and then we distribute and test that water supply that goes to your tap. So when we talk about water conservation, a good starting point is your water bill. And we're going to get into this a little bit here, but one of the things I like to challenge people on is, do you know how much water you're really using? Do you take a look at your water bill when it comes every month or bi-monthly or however often your billing cycle is, or do you just pay it and move on? I would encourage you to take a look at that water bill, and we're going to get into what you should look for. But on the right side of your screen here, you'll see a chart. This chart kind of represents what the average water use is per person here in the region of Waterloo. So if you live in a one-person household, you know your average should be about 4.5 cubic meters per month. And if you live in a two-person household, it's 9, so it's essentially double, and so on and so forth. If you live in a household with more than 5 people and you're not on this chart, then you just have to do a bit of math. So you'll do the number of people in your household times 4.5 to find out how many cubic meters of water you should be using every month. And coming up, we're to get into how your water use compares and where can you find that information on your water bill. So if we can move to the next slide, Lisa. Thank you. On the right side of your screen here, you'll see a graph. So Nicole mentioned we have a wet home water review program that has been running since 2015. And we do a bit of a questionnaire for homeowners when they apply to our program and when they complete the program. And this is just a bit of data from that. So the blue line, you'll see what people estimate to be their monthly water usage. And then the orange line, you'll see that's their actual usage. So ever since the beginning of this program, there's been a bit of a discrepancy between what people estimate to use versus what they actually use. And as you can see, as the years have gone on, that gap has widened a little bit. So it's something that we spend a lot of time and energy trying to educate people on is, where can you find that information? Do you use as much water as you think you use? Oftentimes you're using more. And that's essentially why we find water conservation is important, because a lot of people don't really know how much water they're using on a daily or on a monthly basis. And this here is an example of a utility bill. This one specifically is from the Kitchener Utilities. All of these documents are available on our website. So if you see that QR code on your screen and you have a means of scanning that, you can take a look at your water bill. But the link has been posted there in the chat, so feel free to click on that as well or bookmark it. But essentially, this document here outlines what you should be looking for on your water bill and how you can, spot that cubic meter reading and compare it to the regional average there.
Thanks, Tyler. As you know, the title of our webinar is What You Don't Want to Hear About Your Water Use. So I'm wondering if you could start off our conversation with something that everyone watching should know.
Sure. I kind of touched on this a little bit here already, but when you take a look at your water bill, if you do, there's some things that you're in control of and there's some things that you aren't in control of. So your water bill has three components to it. So you have your consumption, which is kind of highlighted in green there. That's another way of saying that's the amount of water that you use during that billing cycle. And then you have your utility rate. There's a multiplication there that comes out to the charges that you pay for every month. So I want to stress the importance of these next 2 points here. You can't change the utility rate. That's set by your municipality. But what you can change is your consumption. And by extension, you can reduce the amount of charges that show up on your water bill. So that's essentially what we're going to be talking about in this webinar is how you can reduce that consumption and how you can cut down on those water bills as a result. And I just want to get into the actual water bill example itself here on the next slide. So we showed you the full document there in a few slides ago. This is just a zoomed in version. So this is the actual water portion of that Kitchener Utilities bill. What we're looking for is that total consumption number there. So you'll see that the person in this sample uses 5 cubic meters every month. If that's a one-person household, that's a little high for a single person, or maybe that's a family that went on vacation and they didn't use as much water that month. It's really something that you should be tracking on an ongoing basis, but that's where it's indicated on your bill. And in the next slide, we'll take a look at some other examples of some utility bills from around the region. So on the left side here, this is actually a utility bill from, I believe, the city of Waterloo. So this one actually shows you some of your historical consumption data there in the second last column where it says consumption. So you'll see that some of those water demands kind of peaked during certain billing cycles and they were a little lower there at the beginning. So it's just something that you can read on your water bill that helps you keep track of how much water you're using. And then the example on the right, that's actually from the city of Cambridge. That just shows you a bit of a visual representation of your water consumption. As you can see, this person had a lot of water consumption in the month of August 2019. So maybe that's somebody who uses a pool or does some outdoor watering. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation as well. And so with that information in mind, if we could get the next slide here, Lisa. Remember, the most cost-effective way to reduce your water consumption and your water bills is a change in behavior. And we're going to go over some ways that you can do that today, but that's going to be the takeaway. And that's the thing that we spend a lot of time talking to people at events that we go to is the most cost-effective and simple way to, have a positive effect on your water bill is, some of those behavioral changes and those changes to the habits that you don't even notice each and every day.
Thanks again, Tyler. So while we're on this topic of water bills, can people expect their bills to increase in the summer when they do things like watering their lawn or filling their pools or other seasonal activities?
I think it's reasonable to say that some people will get higher water bills in the summer, especially if you spend time doing some watering outdoors, or if you have a pool, if you water your lawn, or if you're taking care of a garden. Any sort of outdoor irrigation or water use, you're going to experience higher water bills compared to the winter months, or maybe even the fall when you're not doing those activities. But on the right side of your screen here is a schedule for our water conservation bylaw, and like you mentioned, if people are experiencing higher water bills in the summer, it's because they're using more water, and that puts more of a strain on our water supply during the summer, which is why the water conservation bylaw was introduced. So each year between May 31st and September 30th, you can water your lawn once a week between 5:30 to 10 a.m. and 7 to 11 p.m. And we actually got a question in the chat right at the beginning of our webinar here. Why do we water between 5:30 and 10 and 7 to 11? Well, the reason we water between these hours is because it's going to be how you water your lawn most efficiently. So if you water when it's cooler out and not during the peak of the day, you're not going to be losing much water due to evaporation. So we really want you to get the most out of your watering, and that's going to happen between these hours. So thank you for that question in the chat. But just to address the bottom of the table there, if you're not aware of our bylaw, uh, if your address ends in a 0 or a 1, you're going to water on Mondays. 2 or a 3, you're going to water on Tuesdays, and so on and so forth. And if that schedule doesn't work for you, we'll actually be talking about a permit you can apply for to change that date later on in the presentation. So speaking of the bylaw, I just want to go into some of the importance of the bylaw itself. So if we could move to the next slide, Lisa, thank you. Prior to the water conservation bylaw, water usage would increase up to 50% during the summer months. And of course, this isn't sustainable, especially for our region where we do have a growing population and we are going to have more and more demands for drinking water. And that's essentially what we're trying to preserve here is if people are watering their lawns and doing other outdoor watering, we just want to make sure that there's still enough water for people to drink. So it's not just lawn watering. So the bylaw also applies to a few other things, which if you want more info on that, you can go to regionofwaterloo.ca/water bylaw. And I believe some of you saw the video that was playing before the webinar started. But there's some specifics on some of the rules. But the big piece is this lawn watering piece. So again, you have 1 day per week between 5:30 and 10 a.m. or 7 to 11 p.m. And if we can switch over to the next slide, Lisa, thank you. So I want to talk about your lawn a little bit. And I know Brendan's going to spend a little bit of time talking about this as well, but your lawn only needs about 1 inch of rain or watering per week. If you get 1 inch of rain or water, your lawn has enough water to sustain itself for about a week. And part of the giveaway we're actually doing today, when you fill out the survey at the end, there's going to be a rain gauge in there. A rain gauge is a great way to tell how much water your lawn is getting and if your lawn needs to be watered, if at all. So another thing to note, yellow lawns aren't necessarily dead. So many lawns go dormant during the peak warmth in the summer. So just because your lawn's looking a little yellow does not mean that it's dead. It just means it's a little dormant. Those usually return to being green later on in the season. And I mentioned this before, and we'll go into it in a few slides here. There are permits you can apply for if you're planting seed or laying down sod. Again, you're going to want to visit regionofwaterloo.ca/water bylaw for more information. And next slide here, most lawns don't need water, but if you must, please abide by the bylaw. So again, figure out your lawn watering day, water during those cooler times of day to make sure you're getting the most efficient water on your lawn. If you have sprinklers, you could turn on a timer. I already mentioned the rain gauge, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but collecting and using rainwater is a great way to, water anything that you have, whether it's your lawn or garden. So using a rain barrel or a cistern, which Brendan will be talking about later, we always encourage those, and those aren't subject to the bylaw. So if you're not turning on the tap and you have another source of water, then we definitely encourage you to use that. And the last thing I want to mention here is some of those permits that I talked about. So if we could go to the next slide here, Lisa. So if you're laying down seed or sod, we do have permits that you can apply for that will allow you to water outside of its designated bylaw watering times. So again, I'm going to reiterate this, regionofwaterloo.ca/water bylaw if you want to find those permits and apply to them. The seed and sod permits are free. We just need to get you into our system. So it'll allow you to water outside of those designated bylaw times. And like I mentioned before, if the bylaw schedule doesn't work for you, we do have another permit available. So if you're not home or available on your designated lawn watering day, then you can apply to change that day. The cost for that day change permit is $10, and you can do it once per season. But we want to make sure that we're accommodating your schedule as best as we can. So again, regionofwaterloo.ca/water bylaw. If you have any follow-up questions at the end about the permits or any of the bylaw stuff, just please type it in the Q&A or message us in the chat. And I think I'll throw it back to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Tyler, for sharing all the bylaw and the permits. So it's very, very insightful. So now over to Brendan. Brendan, getting into some of the general tips, what are some of the more common ways of households can save on water?
Yeah, well, you can go to the next slide. So some of the things that tend to be things that use more water and things that are easy to change that can save water are showers tend to be the highest usage of water. So that's a good place to start, and that's kind of perhaps the easiest way to save a lot of water. One thing that tends to use a lot of water is taking longer showers. So if you can shorten your shower down to 5 minutes or so, you can save a lot of water that way. And also how often you shower. If you're showering, more than once a day, or even once a day, if you can shower less than once a day, but certainly if you can shower no more than once a day, that will really help. Dishwashing is another thing. If you have a dishwasher and you're putting your dishes in the dishwasher, sometimes people will pre-wash the dishes, and in other words, just rinse them off before you put them in the dishwasher. Usually that's not necessary, and most dishwashers are actually designed to clean the dishes without being rinsed. So rinsing is just using extra water. So try it without rinsing them. If you're one of those households where you do rinse them beforehand, try doing it without rinsing them. I know my dishwasher does very well without rinsing them. So and a lot of dishwashers do. Most newer dishwashers at least do work that way. And the other thing is just watering lawns too frequently. I know Tyler was just talking about that a little bit, but really, for the most part, in our climate, it's not really necessary to water your lawns at all for most of the time. The only time that you might really need to water your lawn is in longer periods of drought, when we don't have rain for a long time. Certain times of year that happens, but for the most part, it's not really necessary. And although the lawn may go dormant, may go yellow for part of the year, that's pretty normal. That's a part of the normal cycle for grass to do that. So certainly maybe cutting down, but also watering less often, but watering enough, watering a 1 inch, as Tyler said, but doing it less often is better for your lawn too, because it lets that water soak into the ground better and soak down lower, and then your grass, the roots of your grass grow deeper to reach that water, and so it makes your lawn more resilient, and it makes it's sort of better for your lawn that way, and it helps your lawn to grow stronger so that it doesn't require watering, small waterings more frequently. So those are some some good things to think about for saving water.
Thanks, Brendan, for sharing some of those common practices. And I'm just curious, as a water auditor that's gone to so many homes, what are some examples of inefficiency or examples of leaks that you have detected when conducting a home water audit?
Yeah, well, on the next slide, we have some of those things. I mentioned showers, and I was talking about how long you shower and that sort of thing, but also what type of shower head you have makes a big difference. So having a high efficiency shower head uses quite a bit less water than sort of an older one. An efficient shower head uses maybe about 4.6 to 7.6 liters per minute. And some of the less efficient ones might use twice that much or more. So, over the course of a 5 or 10 minute shower, that really adds up and can really add up on your water bill. When you're looking for a shower head, if your shower head is not efficient, if you're looking for one, it is sometimes written on the shower head. It usually is written on the shower head somewhere on the packaging, what the liters per minute is, but it might be written very small. So sometimes it's hard to see and hard to find. But one easy way to know is if you look for the water sense label. That's this little circle in the middle of the screen here that says water sense, and it's got kind of a raindrop picture on it. You'll see that on a lot of the packaging of a lot of shower heads, and that means that it's an efficient, high efficiency shower head. So that's a good way to find one. Toilets are another thing. Older toilets might use 13 to 20 liters per flush. That's like over twice as much as a newer toilet. So a high efficiency toilet that you might buy today and install might use anywhere from 3 to 5 liters per flush. So that can make a big difference too, to be more efficient. Washing machines, the newer high efficiency front loading washing machines use a lot less water than your traditional top loading machines. There are some high efficiency top loading machines as well, which use less water than the traditional type of top loading machine. They use a little bit more water than the front loading high efficiency ones, but they're still efficient and using less water than the older type. Humidifiers are another thing that can use quite a bit of water, depending on the type, particularly a type of humidifier that you have. The usual type that I mostly see right now in homes is what's called a flow-through humidifier, which sort of has a pad that the water runs through, and then it just runs out a hose through the bottom. So it's just sort of a flow of water that's running out and down the drain. There is a more efficient type called a rotary disc humidifier, which sort of is a disc that uses the water, and it just uses a lot more of the water in the humidifier rather than having it go right down the drain through a drain hose. So that's something to look for. But sometimes you can actually avoid using your humidifier at all. Oftentimes a humidifier is just installed on a furnace by default, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need it, or that your house is too dry and that you need a humidifier. So you might think about at least turning it down as far as you can, and possibly even not using it at all if your house is not that dry. The cause for dryness in the wintertime, it's usually in the wintertime when your air gets dry in your house. And the cause of that is actually the cold, dry air from outside getting in your house, getting inside your house. And so kind of the best way to avoid getting too dry in the house is to try and seal up your house as well as possible. And for instance, not opening doors or windows a lot, or sometimes I know it's a temptation to open your window at night to let air in, but in the wintertime, you're just letting cold air in it, and that's dry air, so it's going to dry out your house a bit. So it's the best way to keep from having really dry air inside is to try and seal up your house as much as possible. So some of the leaks that we see when we're doing audits, toilets are the most common. Leaks in the toilet. Now, when I say a leak from a toilet, I'm not talking about water leaking onto the floor that you would see. This is a type of leak where the water leaks from the tank on the top and into the bowl and sort of drains out gradually through the normal drain of the toilet. So you don't see water leaking anywhere, and you oftentimes can't tell that it's happening. You just don't know that that's happening. So what we do is what's called a dye test, where we put some coloring in the tank. So you take the lid off the top of the toilet and put some coloring in there, and you wait 30 minutes or so, and then you check if that coloring is getting into the bowl, the lower part of the toilet, and that tells you if the toilet's leaking. We're going to take a closer look at that in some slides in just a minute, so I won't go any further into that right now, but that's a really common, toilet leaks are a really common one. Softeners can sometimes leak as well, and your softener should only be running, only have water running when it's regenerating, and usually that's in the middle of the night. So if you have a softener, you probably heard it, that swish of water, that shh sound that's going usually in the middle of the night. That's the only time when it should be doing it. It really should only be doing that maybe once a week or less. So if you're hearing it more often than that, a good way to check for that sort of leak too, it isn't always if it's leaking, it's usually not making that that loud rushing sound that it does when it's regenerating. Sometimes it's just making a very little hissing sound. So if you put your ear right up next to it and listen for a sort of a hissing or a water flowing sound, just a little, you can often just hear it. If you hear anything from your softener, if you're doing this, for instance, during the day when it shouldn't be regenerating, it could be that your softener has a leak, and you might want to have it checked out, because it could be that the drain valve is starting to go and letting water through when it shouldn't, and that can cause a lot of water use. Pools sometimes can leak, of course. It's not that easy to check for leaks in your pool, though. I guess probably the most the easiest way to tell if you've got a leak in your pool is how often you have to top it up, and monitoring the water level in the pool in the summertime when it's in use. If you have to top it up more than once a month or so, you might check it, because it's possible that you might have a leak. Certainly you're going to lose some water from evaporation and from splashing, but if it's more than once a month or so, it's a sign that it might have a leak. Showers. Now, showers, typically, if your shower is leaking, obviously if there's water leaking right out of your shower head, you probably would notice that, and you probably have seen it. And certainly if there is a drip or a leak coming out of your shower, you want to fix that, have that fixed, by changing the washers. But more commonly, you might have, if you have a shower and bathtub combination, usually the way that works is that you turn the valve on, and then there's a little lever to pull on the tub spout to divert the water up to the shower, and so then the water comes out of the shower, of course. But Sometimes you'll still get a lot of water coming out of the tub spout as well. And that can be a real waste of water because then you're not really using that water. It's just going right down the drain. So if you see that, if you notice that's happening, it's good to have that fixed and so that it actually does show. I mean, it's pretty common to have just a little drip or drizzle coming out of that tub spout while the shower is going. But if it's more than that, sometimes it can be more, and that can be a real waste of water. So you might either have the tub spout replaced or soak in some vinegar so that you get rid of the water deposits so that it closes better. But that can be another thing that that is leaking. I guess when we go up to the next slide, and this is, I was talking about toilet leaks. Toilet leaks are the most common types of leak. And so this is a little diagram showing what you can do, how you can test for that. As I said, you lift the lid off the back, off the tank in the back, and you can just use food coloring from this. This diagram comes from a little card that that we pass out during a water audit, and it has a little peelable thing that you can of coloring that you can drop in the tank. But it's the same thing as you can just put food coloring in there. And then you wait about 30 minutes to see, 20 to 30 minutes to see if that water, that colored water is getting into the bowl. And you can see in the lower part there, number 2 is to check that. If you do have that color getting in, it's usually a pretty simple thing to fix. Why don't we move to the next slide, because it's got some pictures of some of the things that might be leaking in your toilet. The main thing, and usually what it means if you do have that issue, is this the green part here that you see in the bottom of the tank. That the flapper is usually what is causing the leak, and they just wear out, but sometimes they get hard water deposits in them that cause them to leak too. But it's a pretty simple thing to replace. You can just sort of pull it out and take it to the hardware store and find another one that there are different types, so you need to know exactly what type you've got. So if you bring the old one in, you can get the right type and just drop it back in and hook it right back up. It's pretty simple process. Another possibility that's common is that the water level in the tank is too high, and it's overflowing into the overflow tube. And you see in this picture, you see the overflow tube there that it's marked. It's kind of a tube to keep the tank from the water from just flowing out of the top of the tank if it gets too much. But sometimes what happens is if the valve, sort of the float in the tank is too high, that water level can get up above the overflow tube, and you can have water just running into that tube constantly and going down the drain. So that can be a really big water waster. What you can do about it is adjust the level of the water in the tank, and usually that's with a screw with that, it says float rod screw there, right above that other part in the picture here, and that's a little screw that you can tighten up to make the water valve shut off at a little bit lower level, right below the level of the overflow tube, so that you don't have that issue. As I said, all toilets, not all toilets, but a lot of toilets, there's a lot of different types of toilets, and some don't look exactly like this, but usually there's some mechanism that you can probably figure out that would adjust that water level for you.
Thanks, Brendan, for sharing. So maybe getting into what we can do outside the house. So what are some common gardening practices and can you provide some examples of efficient gardening?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Some of the things about gardening, I guess probably one of the best things you can do is to just sort of think about what types of plants you have in your garden, and maybe at least gradually try to change over to planting more native species that are actually from our area of the country, and they tend to need less watering. So because they're sort of evolved and developed to to match our climate, they do pretty well with just the amount of rainwater that we get. So that's a really good way to cut down on the amount of watering that you need to do in the garden. Another way that you can do that is by adding mulch. Mulch is a really good way. It keeps the water in the soil next to the roots of the plant. So you don't have to water as often. It holds that water there for them, and it prevents water from evaporating. So because it's sort of underneath the mulch, and amongst the mulch, it prevents the water from evaporating. So you get your plants to have access to a lot more of that water that you're using to water. And as Tyler mentioned, it's also a great idea to use rainwater as much as you can to capture rainwater in rain barrels or a cistern, and then use that water to water your gardens. It's actually better for your plants as well. That rainwater is it doesn't have the chlorine in it that we have in our drinking water, so your plants like it better. And so it's a really good idea if you can find a rain barrel. Sometimes there are rain barrel sales throughout the summer, particularly in the spring, where you can get rain barrels for a little bit cheaper, and that's a really good way to conserve water in the garden. And then another way to be more efficient in the garden is to plant a rain garden. Now, a rain garden is a type of garden that is designed to collect a lot of rainwater to all at once. It's sort of a bowl-shaped or a tub-shaped garden that's filled up with a sort of a compost and sand and mulch mix that holds a lot of water. And usually you would run your downspouts from your roof directly into this rain garden, and that way you're keeping that water from running off into the storm drains, but you're also your plants, the type of plants that are in a rain garden are plants that really appreciate having a lot of water all at once, and then they have really deep roots, so they can handle they can be happy in the garden without having water all the time. So they can deal with periods of drought or of less water, because they have those deep roots tapping into more of the water underground.
Thanks, Brendan. And if those that haven't seen the chat, if you have any questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A function. We'll be answering all through the webinar. And then I also added 2 links for you if you're interested in getting started. We have programs at Reep, which is a rain garden coach. It's a healthy yard consultation, and then a bloom in box for some native species. So over to you, Nicole. In the water programs team's experience, do homes with swimming pools usually use more water in the summer months than pools without? Can you maybe tell us a little bit about any findings the water programs team may have on this topic?
Sure. So pools, we all know pools can be a lot of fun and are a relaxing way to cool down during the summer months. However, if they're not properly maintained, you can end up spending more money and sending more on your outdoor water use bills and sending more water down the drain than necessary. Pools in general require a significant amount of water to fill up and occasionally top up, but you can also lose water through evaporation, cleanings, maintenance, leaks, and splashings. So we have, looking at the water consumption trends in homes with and without pools, we found that on average, homeowners that do have a pool or a hot tub are using more water in the summer months than those households that don't have pools. There could be a number of reasons contributing to this. It could be increased number of social gatherings. It could be just from the pool top-ups, the maintenance. maybe there's more outdoor water use happening in general. Could also be from leaks and splashings from day-to-day use in the pool.
Thanks, Nicole. Maybe are you able to share some water saving tips for pool owners?
Sure. I'm going to move to the next slide. Thanks. So evaporation is one of the leading causes of water loss in residential pools, and is dependent on a number of variables, including temperatures, humidities, and winds. One way you can address evaporation is you can have a pool cover. It's the most effective way to reduce this type of water loss. You can decrease water loss by up to 90% if you have a pool cover, and with heated pools, they can also cut costs, heating costs by 50 to 70% if you put on your cover when you're not using your pool. If you keep your pool free of debris and microbes, you can reduce the corrosion and development of leaks in your pool, and also increase the longevity of your pool water. So you can use things like skimmers and vacuums to manually remove leaves and debris to reduce the load on your filters, and then increase the time between backwashes as necessary. I know I mentioned that some of the water loss you might experience if you're a pool owner or a hot tub owner is from leaks, and leaks are really hard to quantify in pools because they're not always visible. You can find leaks in pool liners, pump seals, piping, the pool to pipe connections, along the pool edges, and in pool joints. One way to tell if your pool is likely leaking is if your pool is losing more than 5 centimeters of water per week, or if there are wet spots around the pool, or air bubbles in the water return pipeline or the pipe strainer, you might have a leak. We recommend you perform regular inspections and fix leaks as they occur whenever possible. You could check the connections when opening your pool in the spring, as seals usually or can loosen over the winter. And then when you go to winterize your pool, make sure you balance out your pool chemicals and add winterization chemicals such as shock and algaecide to kill bacteria and algae. And you don't need to drain your pool entirely. You can just drain it to just below the jets as part of your winterization process as well. And then the last area I wanted to just touch on is the water loss due to splashing around pools, or when somebody gets in and out of the pool and a lot of water exits the pool with them. So like leaks, the water loss due to splashing is hard to quantify, but you could implement features like gutters around the outside of your pool or grate systems around the edge to drain water back into the pool. You could also try maintaining water levels about 4 inches below the 4 inches of water from the top of the pool deck to prevent overflowing of water when people are getting in and out of the pool, or when people are splashing around in the pool.
Thanks, Nicole. Those are great tips. I'm curious to know, are there any limitations when draining your pools?
Well, pool and hot tub draining can be typically infrequent, though both are sometimes unavoidable due to repairs or to improve the overall water quality of the pools or the hot tubs. Before you're discharging water with chlorination, you should be sure to dechlorinate the water with either dechlorination tablets, or to let the water sit in your pool for 48 to 72 hours without adding any chemicals. I do want to mention that discharging pool or hot tub chemical filled water to our storm sewers or local waterways is considered an environmental spill. So if it's drained to a storm drain, stormwater actually returns to our local water sources without treatment. Whereas if you were to drain it to the sanitary sewers, that water moves through like a treatment plant, as Tyler was talking about before returning to our local waterways. And then always remember to top up your pool and hot tubs on your watering days during the summer months, as assigned by the Water Conservation Bylaw, to reduce demand on our water supply and distribution systems.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. And now that we're kind of near the end, question for each of the panelists. Do you have any key takeaways that you want to share with everyone? Maybe I'll start with Nicole.
I think I would say that the water conservation bylaw is an effective tool for maintaining your lawns and gardens and in reducing the costs associated with your outdoor water use. So a single watering once a week is actually a great way to maintain a healthy lawn. Um, and the bylaw is also critical in managing our high water peak demand periods in the region. So I'd really encourage you, if you're not familiar with the water conservation bylaw, to check out the links in the chat and look up your watering day.
And for me, I would say my biggest takeaway is that knowing is half the battle. So I spent a lot of time this evening talking about taking a look at your water bills and what to watch out for and keeping track of that information going forward. Because when you know how much water you're consuming, you can find ways to cut down on that water consumption and save money on that water bill. So, you know, your everyday use has a significant impact on your water bill. So it's time to start tracking that information going forward.
And Brendan, do you have any key takeaways for?
Sorry, yeah, I was talking, but I was muted. Yeah, I would say that the most important thing is probably looking at your showers and trying to save water there by upgrading your shower head to a high efficiency shower head, and by just trying to reduce your shower time as much as you can, getting as close to like 5 minutes as you can for shower time. But also checking your toilets for leaks. And that's done, of course, as I said, by adding food coloring, and you wait for 30 minutes or so without flushing. And then if you see any coloring in the bowl, to replace the flasher or flapper, or adjust the water level in the tank to fix that.
Great, thank you all. So thank you to all our panelists tonight, and thank you for everyone that participated to tonight's webinar and asking any questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So hopefully we were able to answer all your questions. If you do have any other questions, please send your questions to Tyler or Nicole at watercycle@regionofwaterloo.ca. And then I will add it to the chat. And then as well as our survey. So we really do appreciate feedback on how we can improve these webinars, if there are any topics that you would like us to cover in the future. So as mentioned earlier, you will be entered in a draw to win the water efficiency prize pack, and 3 lucky winners will be contacted by the end of the week. So I will send the link in, so I will add the survey link in the chat right now. So please fill it out. And then to wrap it up, if you enjoyed this webinar, we have another webinar on Tuesday, October 8th at 7 p.m. on trusting your tap. Everything that you need to know about the Region of Waterloo water supply, including where your drinking water comes from and what you should trust your drinking water. So we hope to see you there. And again, thank you so much and have a wonderful night, everyone. Thank you.